Hey, this is Keith from Save the Rust. So tonight I thought I'd show you some of the extra gas tanks I have around. And, some of them will have a little story with them. But just off the top of my head, I think I've probably got 30 or 40 gas tanks of various years, right from 1910 to mid 70s of all makes, American, British. I'm not even sure if I have any Japanese, but yeah, a bunch of different tanks, and we'll go through them and kind of give you a little explanation on them. And some of them are really rare. Some of them are in really great shape. Some of them are very poor shape, but they exist, and we have them here. We got the wall of tanks here, and you know what? I love looking at the tanks. I love the history. I love the uniqueness of them. All the different years, how they change, and lots of research has to go into figuring out what years they are. Some of them I know exactly, some of them I have no clue, but follow along as we go through all our tanks. We're going to start off with this Wizard tank. You can see there's been some gray painted over it. Original emblem. Original gas cap. So this would be late 40s, early 50s. Wizard went on like they were sold as a kit that went onto a bike. It was it had a motor, and then later they came out as a complete kit. Then on this shelf, this is a 48. I believe it's a 48 Harley 45. This tank came off a bike that had been in a fire years ago and then sat outside for over 20 years. I rescued it. I cleaned it, but it's got a lot of issues. So it's got the later, I think that's a 47. So 47, 48 shifter gate. So cool tank. This is a BSA M20, World War II. And what's really unique about this one is the cutout in the back. You see how one side doesn't follow? There's a pipe that would come up. There would be a pipe that would come up here and then go in. And on top of this tank, there'd be a big air filter. This is, I believe, for the desert, like for chasing Rommel across the desert in World War II. So it's kind of a unique tank. It's, one of those tanks that once you see it, you recognize it immediately. These are a set, I believe, are aftermarket tanks. Just a panhead, 5-gallon, nothing special. Here's a really cool tank, really cool history on it. So this was found at the Canadian Motorcycle, the House of Horsepower, really. And Canadian Joe icon, you'll see a 1940 WLDR, that was his. And this is a Ducati tank. And what was neat is on this tank, it had like a 12-foot stretch of fuel line. And they used this to run motors or run bikes that didn't have the tanks on. So this was like, it was used not on a bike, but for different bikes. Here's a 45 gas tank. Had some repairs done, and now I have to do some repairs on it. It wasn't welded correctly behind here, but we're going to use this on one of our bikes. Those are the tank mounts. I've cut them off. So here's a pretty cool tank. This is a Pixie tank, and this would have been went on the back tire of a bike. So on the like if you look at this bike here, it would have positioned behind the rider on the back wheel, and it had a motor underneath it, and this was the fuel tank for it. Original paint, really cool, great graphics, made in Canada. Cool tank. Then we have a set of Indian gas tanks. This came off Wayland's 1937 Indian. We ended up getting a new set of aftermarket tanks for it, and that's where the way we're going. So these will sit on the shelf for now. This is a set of 67, I believe, and later pan shovel tanks. Found these in a attic of a house. I'm not sure how many years they were there, but you know, I just love the flame job on it. It's just so period, you know. Just love the color. Here's a 1946 Francis Barnett, about a 122, 197 cc, and this is the original paint. Got this out of Saskatchewan from a fellow who I think it was his grandfather's, and I got a few pieces with it. It was like he only found a few pieces of the bike. I found the exhaust and there was a couple of pieces, but really cool tank. Here's a, I mean, they're all cool, but this, very unique. So here's a DKW tank. This one, chromed and painted, kind of like, can't remember exactly what they call this, like a bubble gum or something tank. But, it's neat how it's flared, and, the workmanship's phenomenal. Like if you chrome something, you're going to see, marks from when they welded it together, but there's nothing. It's really well done. Here's a 5960 Harley panhead right side gas tank. You can tell by the emblem. This is a 5960 emblem, and if you pulled the emblem off on these, it would actually, there's the emblem's actually recessed in. Decent shape. It's got some, you can see some work done on here. Not original paint. This is 70s Climber Indian dirt bike. These were, they weren't great bikes. They were just basically, Italian bikes of the era that were badged as an Indian. The only real cool features on the fuel cap, it says Indian, but, they really basically aren't anything to do with Indian, in my opinion. James tank. This came out of, I think, Alberta, Canada. I believe this is a 58 tank. Obviously someone had put a circle on it and probably was gonna put a number for racing. That's a pretty cool tank there too. That's a, if I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's a 46 BSA, 1 year only tank. And if I can get it down without wrecking anything. Oh, sorry, 47. So the Speedo would have went in here, and you see how it has a hole in it for the Speedo cable. Pretty neat tank. Really solid. I don't have a bike for it. One day I'll, send it off to someone who could use it. Since I'm only focusing on the tanks that aren't on motorcycles, and at the present this one isn't. This is the 1910 to 14 Flanders 4 copper gas and oil tank. And you can read Flanders 4 in it. Here's the 4, it's kind of elongated. The oil drip still works beautifully. That's the fuel side. You can still see Flanders. Very cool. Here's another 45 tank. This is the oil side, and it just beat. This actually had a few pounds of lead when I got it. It was all painted over, so you can see where it's all beat up. I'm gonna try and straighten it out. I cut the inside section out already. That would go in there. We'll try and fix it, use it. So we'll continue with this Original paint, 1952 New Hudson. This would have been an auto cycle tank. So pedal start with a 98cc Villiers motor. Beautiful graphics. Then we got 1948 to 52 famous James tank. Again, original paint, but the paint's very faded. You can see on the inside the color it should be and the color it is. The other side has a dent, but still all original paint. Tank's in great shape. And then we got 46 New Hudson auto cycle tank. This one's an interesting one as opposed to the other one because this one, the motor was horizontal. It was also 98 or 49 or 98 cc Villiers powered, but this one, I believe this is a new old stock tank. I got this with a few other new old stock parts, and just in incredible shape, you know. And it's what's wild is I love looking at the pinstriping because it's hand done. This isn't machine done, so you can see, you know, imperfections. You can see how it gets thinner and then thicker, and it's the same on this tank here. You know, you can see here just how it's not perfect. And here it's not perfect, but it, you know, that's the cool part because it's not perfect. It was hand done, hand pinstriped. Here we have another 1942 Harley 45 or WLC tank, and you can see this one. That's why it's not on a bike yet. It was this was hammered in, recessed it into the tank, dented it quite a bit, you know. So needs a lot of repairs. So we'll have to, you know, come up with a plan on this one and then try and save it. The problem is when you get where all these mounts underneath and it starts getting all, if it cracks or anything, you have to remove the entire mount to repair it. But you can just see how much this is folded over. This is a major work. So it's not the first tank we've had to fix, but it won't be the last. But that one will be a little bit of a challenge. So this tank hangs with my little chopper part stuff, but pretty interesting tank. I got this out of a barn about 5 miles from my house. The artist is BJ Miles. I know nothing about it except it was in this barn for probably the last 40, 50 years. Probably since the 70s. Just, you know, it's period. Definitely period. And that's an old Harley Super Glide tank. So that's an old Wassel tank. British chopper part, you know, from the 70s, 80s. That's a BSA tank. It needs some repairs. It looks good on the shelf. That's another one. That's about a 1946 Francis Barnett. And in the right light, you can still make out Francis Barnett on the tank. That's another auto cycle tank. Kind of neat. You know, just a unique design. You know, a couple more chopper tanks. I believe that's a Wassel also. And then we get in, that's a James ML tank, military lightweight tank. I have one of these bikes and only identified this tank after getting that bike. And then this one, I believe that one's an old BSA Bantam. It's hard to remember. So here we got a trio of 1948 to 52, 53 James 98 cc's. They actually come up from underneath the frame. So the frame tube would go in here, so you gotta slide it from underneath. That is a 197 or 122 James. Same thing, same era, late 40s to mid 50s, something like that. We have another Climber Indian gas tank with the Indian script on the tank, repainted obviously. You can kind of make out Indian if you look at it in the right light. And here's a very rough, that's the mate to that one that was in the fire I showed you before. This is the oil tank version, and it is completely shot. There's nothing left of this tank in a fire. And from what probably happened was it boiled the oil, blew it out, and then as the oil went onto the motor, it just, kept burning that tank so bad. So, good wall ornament. And another pair of Auto Cycle. These again are late 40s to early 50s, probably about 48 to 52. So again, pedal start, Villiers powered 98cc. And these mounts here, there's a shroud that goes and covers the engine. And kind of neat. I have a bike like that, just in case you didn't know what it looked like. Since you just saw the tank that was all blown out and because it was in a fire, that's the transmission. The entire case has been blown out, and that's the motor for that same bike. The cams are exposed. There's no cam cover left. The cases are completely shot. Just thought it'd be interesting to see that. That's how bad that fire got. Really cool 70s Sportster tank. Nice. I love that emblem. And even though this is on a frame, you cannot take it off because it's actually been welded on. That's a 53, 54 aerial. I think it was a square 4 chopper frame. And with the tank on it, it's probably a Sportster tank. That was painted in 1972 by a fellow named John Presso. Over 50 years ago, he painted that. He's still a painter. And then this tank, that was another Sportster tank that John had painted in 1976. So that's like 48 years old and pretty wild. And last but not least, this is a Teens Henderson tank. Found this in southern Manitoba. You can still read Henderson barely, H. Henderson. Obviously it's not salvageable unless you want to put a lot of work in it. But, it's just cool to see that it exists. You got to wonder where the rest of the bike ended up. And that's all the loose gas tanks we have, just kind of laying around. Hope you enjoyed that. Some unique ones, some pretty interesting history on them. Yeah, if you like that kind of stuff, like and follow. Check out our other videos. Hey, there's videos on this and that, this and that, and that. None on that yet. And there's one on this one. There's one on that, Indian, 1940 Indian, one of 12 known to exist. All right, well, this is what we do. This is who we are. We're Save the Rust. Have a great day.